Hello, everyone. My name is Deborah Kahn. I'm the founder of Being Patient, and today we're kicking off another one of our series on diversity and dementia, which is brought to you in support by Eisai, a human healthcare company. Today, we're going to talk about a very important topic, and that is paid family care for dementia caregivers. We all know that more and more people are being diagnosed, and some at an earlier age, with Alzheimer's disease. So how does that change the work dynamic? Well, I'm really pleased to have with us Rochelle Long. She is a caregiver who has spent 15 years as a caregiver to her mom and her late aunt, who passed away several years back. So Rochelle, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's just start first with your situation. I mean, taking care of one loved one is hard enough. I can't imagine doing two at the same time and having a full-time job. So tell us a little bit about the family history and how you first became a caregiver.
Um, Actually, I remember my grandmother, my mother's mother. Um, she was kind of funny when we were young. We didn't know at that time that what was happening to her. We just thought she was kind of funny. But my two of my aunts actually took care of her. The sisters actually took turns keeping her during that time. So caregiving came early. I grew up witnessing it, and I actually came home about 20 years ago because my mother had fallen 3 times unexplained. And it turned out at that time she had spinal stenosis. And so she had to have surgery. And I brought her sister, who was actually her best friend also, to come and help with her once she came out of surgery because I was working. And she was starting to act kind of funny. And so I took her to the doctor and I said, something's going on. Here's the history of the family. At that time, one sister, the mother had passed and one sister was diagnosed. So I said, and when they diagnosed her, I asked them to start testing my mother. I said, because, the genetics were right there.
And you told me before we started this live interview that actually 4 out of the 5 kids, your mom and her and four
Three of
siblings
her siblings.
altogether were
Yes,
diagnosed with
all three.
Alzheimer's.
So my mother was the fourth one, and then the last sister was diagnosed. Actually, she was diagnosed the same year that the one sister passed. Because the two of them, my mother and that particular sister, actually got out the house and went on a venture. And so we had to scatter the neighborhood to try to find them. And I told my cousin, I said, look, you need to have her tested because there's something very wrong here. And the fact that they don't know it is evidence. So um, when it came time to make the decision whether or not to keep my aunt once she was diagnosed, I talked to her family because this particular aunt and my mother have always been close since we were children, small children, since they were children. And they said, quite frankly, she will have more from you guys because here we're so spread out, we just can't do it. That particular brother had a special needs child also. So it was just a lot for him.
I mean, I can't. How did you manage that? You work full time, you have a full time job, and you have 2 people in your home who need care.
I
How
have a
did you
great
even?
boss,
Well, I think you would
phenomenal.
have to have one.
Well, I tell people all the time that the Lord knew what was getting ready to happen. He set it up perfectly because actually, when I got this job that I'm in currently, well, I've had for the last 18 years, I came into a support group built in. My boss was a caregiver for her mother who had dementia. Her brother had the accident side of dementia. Um, And my office mate, he was taking care of his grandmother who had dementia. So I had we would have a staff meeting and then have support group because it was built right in. And so when it happened, I just explained to her what was going on. She was very flexible with my time. I used all of my PTO, sick time, vacation time, comp time, whatever I had through the years, because I also do clinical trials, and I signed up instantly. Uh,
So,
so
Rochelle, I mean, you've become now an advocate for paid family leave when you are a caregiver. So tell me a little bit. I mean, it sounds like, as you stated, you have an amazing boss. Not everyone does.
correct.
But obviously, one of the things that it was important to your situation was just empathy to be flexible, right? And if you needed to do something, you were able to do it. But what you're calling for now, more family paid care, what would that look like from your perspective in terms of taking care of someone? I mean, at 1.2 people with dementia.
Um, it you as a family member can give better care of the people that you're attached to versus putting them in a facility where they're outnumbered 12 to 1. That's an aide. 24 to 1. That's a nurse. One doctor to a floor. It's if I didn't have PTO, I don't know what I would have done. If my boss was not flexible, there's no way it would have worked. As it was, I took one vacation for 10 days in 15 years because
Wow.
all of my PTO, all of my flex time went toward the care for my mother and my aunt. Um, I mean, I would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning to give my aunt a shower, get her dressed, strip her bed before I'd take a shower, get dressed, and I'd go to work because I would sit her up till her aide came for the day to help with her care when she advanced. So, I mean, paid time off is so critical because there are a lot of people who don't have what I have, and they don't have advocates. And so I'm going to advocate because these are the people who took care of us when we were children. When we needed, they took off. They were late going to work. They nursed us when we needed to be taken care of. These are the people who helped build our society and make it what it is today. Why is it that we push them off to the side and say, well, you're used, you're good, just sit down and be careful? No, we give paid leave to newborns. Why not to the people who mean the most to us?
So
I don't
from
understand.
your situation though, how much, I mean, caregiving can be consuming 24/7, and obviously you had some help in the house, which enabled you to go to work, but how much paid from your situation, how much paid caregiving time would have been acceptable? Or I mean, your mom is still with you, so how much would you need? I mean, oftentimes you're putting out fires or there's doctor's appointments, so overall, how much do you think is the right amount of time?
I don't know. They give what, 12 plus weeks
For
for a
babies.
newborn? Yes, for a newborn.
Yeah.
Well, in dementia, my mother's 84 physically, but she's about 4. So she requires that one-on-one for just about everything. I have to go to the bathroom with her when we're home because she gets confused. You know, I have to sit at the table with her to help her eat at the stage that she's in now because she gets confused. You know, I have to be there to help her get dressed, get undressed, get in and out of the shower. My mother, while she's able to do some things, she's often confused about how or what it is. You know, my mother loves bananas all my life. I peeled a banana, handed it to her. She looked at it and said, "What is that?" She didn't know it was something she was supposed to eat or that it was one of her favorite fruits. So when the lady that helps me get her off in the morning when I have to go to work, the pandemic allowed me to work from home, but now that I'm back in the office, when she calls off, I have to text my boss and say, "Hey, she called off. I'm running late. I'll get there in about an hour or so." Whenever her bus gets here, because I have her in an adult day program right now for as long as they let me. And when they don't, then I'll have to figure something else out.
Yeah. So I mean, and that's understandable. It's like, so I get that, the flexibility, and just to know, you can have a little bit of time to sort through things, especially when things go wrong. With such a big family history, Rochelle, tell me a little bit about your experience with clinical trials. And really, I mean, we were talking earlier about cultural differences in terms of dealing with the disease. You, as an African American, there's a high prevalence of dementia within the African American community. And from other people who we've spoken to, they say, it's not something that's openly talked about in African American culture. Especially if it has to do with the brain, it's something people don't like to talk about. So tell me a little bit about your initiative to participate in research, and obviously having such a strong family link to Alzheimer's with so many members of your family.
Well, when my aunt was diagnosed and then subsequently my mother, it became very important because it was in my face. And I just had a determination that I would do everything I possibly could. Clinical trials, talk to who I could talk to, find out what I can find out to become involved in as much as I possibly can, because it's cruel. I have watched this break down my mother. I watched it break down her sister, to a mere image of themselves physically. Um, and it's just something that I've been in 7 trials, clinical trials. One of them was a generational trial. And that's how I found out that I actually possess an ApoE4 gene, that both from one's from my father and one's from my mother. And as a biracial child, I got it from both sides. So my odds just went up with that knowledge. But I don't have the time to worry about it. I'm going to do what I can. I'm going to advocate. I'm going to sign up. If I can sign up with 2 studies at one time, I will. If it will help find out why more people of color become affected by it. I talk. I've talked at church. I've talked at work. I'm in charge. I head up the wellness program in our office. So I do staff retreats. So in their bags every year is Alzheimer's information. Hey, wake up. And I've had people come, say, "Hey, what can I do?" And so it's just a matter of talking. I'm not going to sit quietly. Whatever I can do, we're doing it in our community, wherever that is.
Have you learned anything about your own health through participating in so many clinical trials?
Other than I have the genes.
Yeah, other than you have the genes.
Well, the good thing for me being in clinical trials is I've got an extra set of doctors looking at my health always. So, my primary care physician doesn't see me more than once a year, simply because I get seen by them. And I report, anything that I need to report. Otherwise, I'm good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, certainly the world needs more, and I can't even imagine how much you do and how you find the time to do it. It's amazing.
I try to coordinate. We all have the same doctor, always have, and so I've been blessed that all of the doctors agreed to we can have one appointment, you see all of us. And that was
So you
how
mean you have the same doctor in terms of the clinical trials you're participating in, who is also seeing your mother? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And primary care, we had the same primary care physician. So when it was time for one to go, all three of us went. And so she would see one, see the next, and then we'd leave. And so, I would maximize the opportunity and the time.
Rochelle, how do you find out about the clinical trials that you've participated in?
Dr. Friedland asked me early if I would be interested in it. And then we shifted when he took a sabbatical, we shifted to Dr. Alan Lerner. And I've been with him and his team probably for the last 12, 15 years.
So it's through your doctors, you're hearing about the trials.
Oh, I always have my ear to the ground. I hounded him for years to get into a generational study, but it wouldn't come to Cleveland. It took it a long time to get to Cleveland. I was ready to try to go to Minnesota somewhere and sign up just to find out whatever we can do. I do blood, I do data. I've done infusions, brain scans. So we're on it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's very admirable. And thank you so much for what you do and your advocacy for our viewers out there. We have a really lovely profile of Rochelle on the website, beingpatient.com. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter and we'll keep you abreast of all the talks we have plans. We talk to people like Rochelle from caregiver or patient perspective, as well as the experts who we bring onto the platform to answer your question. So Rochelle, thank you so much for sharing this story. This is a great series, our series Diversity in Dementia, which is brought to you with the support of Eisai, a human healthcare company. Rochelle, thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Take care.
You too.